You've been told you have trust issues. Maybe you said it yourself, as an explanation, an apology, a warning to someone new. I have trust issues, as if it were a flaw, a malfunction. Something to be corrected before you're fit for connection. But consider a different possibility. What if the thing you've been calling a trust issue is actually a highly calibrated detection system, one that was built from real data, refined across real experiences, and has been accurate far more often than anyone gave it credit for? What if the problem was never that you don't trust enough? What if the problem is that you've been taught to override what you already know? The clinical framing of trust issues treats them as a relational deficit, an inability to connect. Residue from attachment wounds that makes you withhold when you should open. And that framing is not entirely wrong, but it is incomplete. Because buried inside what gets labeled a trust issue is almost always a pattern, a very specific, very consistent set of behavioral signals that your nervous system learned to recognize and respond to, not randomly, not irrationally. In response to something that happened, repeatedly, with predictable consequences, your nervous system does not invent threats. It catalogs them. When you feel the thing people call distrust, that low-frequency unease in your chest, the hypervigilance in a new relationship, the compulsion to verify you are not malfunctioning. You are running pattern recognition software that was trained on lived experience. The question is not whether the pattern is real. The question is whether the current situation actually matches the pattern, or whether your system is still running old code. Here is how this works beneath the language we use for it. The human nervous system is a prediction machine. Its primary function is not to experience the present accurately. It is to anticipate the future efficiently. It takes in data from every interaction, every relationship, every environment, and builds predictive models, compressed behavioral templates. When someone in your early life, someone with power, someone you depended on behaved in ways that were inconsistent, unpredictable, or harmful, your system built a model for that. It learned the signature, the microsignals that preceded the rupture, the tone shift before the explosion, the warmth that came just before the withdrawal, the promise that carried the particular cadence of the ones that were broken. It's great that model did not disappear when the relationship ended. It became part of your detection architecture. So when a new person enters your life, and a single element of their behavior rhymes with something in that template, not matches, rhymes, your system responds, not with logic, with immediate, pre-verbal knowing. This is what you experience as distrust, what the clinical world calls a wound. What is more accurately described as a survival system doing exactly what it was designed to do. Most people, when they feel this response activate, do one of two things. They act on it immediately, pulling back, shutting down, testing the person, creating distance. Or they override it entirely, talking themselves out of it, calling it irrational, performing trust they don't feel because they've been told the feeling isn't valid. Neither approach treats the signal with any precision, because the signal is not a verdict, it is information. It is saying, something here rhymes with something I've learned to watch for, not, this person is what I fear. Death, pay attention here. Gather more data. Do not go unconscious in this moment. The people with the healthiest attachment patterns are not the ones who feel no distrust. They are the ones who can receive the signal, assess its current relevance, and respond with discernment rather than either panic or override. They have learned to work with their pattern recognition, not against it. Let's be precise about what this detection system actually monitors. Behavioral inconsistency, when what someone says and what they do exist in a persistent gap. Not once, not in an isolated moment, but as a pattern. Your system catches this early, often before your conscious mind has assembled the evidence. Calibration of kindness, the specific texture of warmth that arrives just before a need is about to be placed on you. That particular softness that isn't quite presence, it's preparation. But your system recognizes the difference between being seen and being set up. Avoidance architecture, how someone moves around certain topics, certain questions, certain moments of accountability. Not aggression, absence, the elegant disappearance from any conversation that would require them to be known. Bid response patterns, whether the small moments of reaching toward someone, the minor vulnerabilities, takes, disclosures are met or missed. Your system tracks this with extraordinary precision. Okay? One missed bid is nothing. A consistent pattern of missed bids is a complete behavioral profile. You have been reading these signals your entire life. Okay. The issue was never the reading. Okay. The issue was being told the readings were wrong. And yet, the system is not infallible. Okay. Because pattern recognition built from pain has a specific vulnerability. It can generalize. If your template was built from a parent who was emotionally unavailable, your system may flag introversion as abandonment. If your template was built from a partner who lied, your system may read any ambiguity as concealment. If your template was built from a friend who used your vulnerability against you, your system may experience intimacy itself as a threat. The signal is real. The source material is real. But the current target may not deserve the pattern it triggered. This is the place where precision matters most. Not the blanket suspension of pattern recognition. That is how people end up repeatedly in the same dynamics, telling themselves they're being open and trusting while the same template plays out again. But the careful, honest question, does this situation actually match the pattern, or does it merely rhyme? The difference between trauma response and wisdom is exactly that question, and the willingness to sit with it long enough to get an honest answer. When someone told you that you had trust issues, they were usually telling you something about themselves. They were telling you that your perception made them uncomfortable, that your detection system was catching something they did not want caught, that your pattern recognition was an obstacle to something they wanted from you. This is not always true. Sometimes the person saying it was trying to help. Sometimes they were right that the system was misfiring. But notice how often the phrase arrives when you've detected something accurately. How often it appears in the mouth of the exact person your system was flagging. How often being told you're too guarded is the last thing someone says before they prove that your guard was warranted. Your distrust is not the problem in those moments. Your willingness to override it is. What would it mean to actually recalibrate, not to trust blindly, and not to close completely, but to develop the kind of discernment that works? It begins with treating the signal as data rather than verdict or noise. When the feeling activates, instead of acting from it or suppressing it, you ask, what specifically am I noticing? Not what am I feeling? That is the response. What behavior, what pattern, what specific moment triggered this reading? Named with precision, the signal becomes information you can examine. It's unnamed. It remains a force that either controls you or gets suppressed. You then ask the harder question, is what I'm seeing here happening now, or am I seeing the past? Not as a way to dismiss the present. Sometimes the past and present genuinely rhyme, but as a way to locate yourself accurately in time. And finally, and this is the part most frameworks skip, you watch for what happens next. Pattern recognition is not a single reading, it is a sequence. The system is designed to update. If you stay present rather than either collapsing into the fear or suppressing it out of politeness, you will accumulate more data. And with more data, the signal becomes increasingly trustworthy. But there are people who will not trigger it. Not because they are perfect. Not because they have never been complicated or difficult or inconsistent. But because their pattern is fundamentally different from the one your system was trained on. The consistency is real and sustained, not performed for an opening period and then withdrawn. A tease. The warmth doesn't precede a demand. It's the accountability, when rupture happens, arrives without theater or collapse. It's the small bids, the minor vulnerabilities, are met with genuine presence, not deflection or management. Your system will quiet in their company. It's not because it has been overridden. It's because it has been given accurate data and reached an accurate conclusion. This is what safety actually feels like. Not the absence of the signal, but the signal finding nothing to report. You don't have trust issues. You have a nervous system that was trained on real experiences, built accurate models, and has been trying to protect you ever since. A D, sometimes with too broad a brush. D, sometimes in situations that no longer require the protection. D, but never without reason. The work is not to dismantle the detection. The work is to develop the discernment to know when it's reading the present and when it's reading the past. It's when the pattern is active and when it's projecting. It's when the signal is protecting you and when it has become the wall you built so well you forgot it was a choice. You are not broken. You are precise. You simply need to learn to trust the instrument, including and especially when it tells you something you would rather not know.